You're a SaaS founder, you've built something solid, but growth still feels harder than it should. Most SaaS companies don't fail because of bad tech. They fail because they've never become a must-have to the right customer. This podcast is here to change that. I'm Ton Dobbe, and this is the Remarkable SaaS Podcast. Every week I talk to founders in the trenches, facing friction, making bold moves, and building companies that last. We dig into real choices around focus, positioning, customer pool, team alignment, the things that separate forgettable software from the ones that people can't live without. No hype, no hacks. Just honest conversations to help you build something that people would miss if it was gone. If your SaaS should be indispensable but isn't yet, this is your podcast. Let's get into it. The guest of my podcast is Dimitri Masin, co-founder and CEO of Gradient Labs.
We really kind of set the bar very, very high for us because from the beginning, and that's kind of our influence from having worked in a regulated financial industry, that the bar needs to be at least as high as humans in those companies can produce, or higher ideally.
That's Dimitri. We dig into how they spent 40 months building before launching to hit 1 million ARR in 5 months with a 100% POC win rate. You'll hear how setting performance guarantees above human-level service creates trust in the most risk-averse market possible. It's a sharp conversation about choosing quality over speed and what happens when you refuse to accept industry standards. Well, hi Dimitri. Thank you for making the time available today and being a guest on my podcast.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Tom.
Pleasure. Particularly because I got intrigued by sort of the mission that you have. That when I read about the company that you started not that long ago, June 23, 2 years ago, almost, making exceptional customer service the norm. I think that's bold. It's a stretch goal.
Thank you.
There's always something you can keep working on, no matter what the technology is. So I was like, having written the book, The Remarkable Effect, like making exceptional customer service the norm. To me, that means, people are talking about it all day long. So
absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about that today. But before we start talking about your company, Gradient Labs, a little bit about you. What drives you? What gives you energy as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never actually thought I will build my own company, right? So I'm definitely not that person who kind of quits uni or school and then just has this drive to build something. For me, it came much later during my career. It's kind of, I was one of the early employees at this company called Monzo Bank in the UK. And I probably joined like as part of the first 30 people. And I've been, since day one, responsible for all things data science, machine learning, AI, and so on. And really, it was quite a big professional and growth journey for me, right? So I never managed people before. I never hired people before or grew teams or like grew organizations. And I was really, really lucky to having battened at the right horse. And when I joined Monzo, it was right during the time where it really kind of took off like a rocket ship. And I was able to stick around and kind of still lead my function in ARR 7 years in and kind of have built out a team of 120 people across the whole organization. And it was an incredible kind of personal scaling journey for me, right? So I've never managed people before, and then going to 120 people and kind of still sticking to the top of the org pyramid was something that I'm very proud of throughout that time. But I think the way I then started thinking about it is kind of everything became quite of, not scary anymore. You hired exceptional people before, you build organizations, you build products, you did all of those things. So nothing really sounded scary anymore about running a company and building your own company. And in particular, because throughout that time, we have been exposed quite a lot to the problem of customer support within Monzo.
Okay.
And so really kind of when we started the company, it was just like a rational choice almost. Like we've been there, done that. It's not a new thing for us. We know the problem really, really deeply. So we don't need to find a new problem. We just need to solve it really well with the technology which just came around the corner. So really it was a logical choice. There's a funny quote, the last thing I'm going to say here. When I was working previously in a startup called Ospo was also like a debit card for kids. I had a conversation with their PM, and he reminded me of that conversation now 10 years later. Said, Dimitri, remember you told me, Sile, we're never going to found our own companies because we are too rational. And now look at us. Sile actually runs one of the most successful kind of hiring video recording companies and hiring augmentation AI company called MetaView. And I'm running Gradient Labs. And we came to the conclusion it was just the rational thing to do to found those companies. That's obviously an anecdote and a joke, but yeah, so that's how things evolve sometimes.
You never know, you know? And if you never try things, you only will have regrets later on. But again,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think there are specific people that, get born and then from the first year they decide I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to, I want to do these things. I think you typically roll into this.
Yeah. But I think what I though didn't say is that I have always a very big drive to solve problems and like
Yeah,
not to accept the status quo. I think while I never thought that I will found like my own company, but there was always this nagging feeling of making something better and never accepting something as good enough. So I think that's kind of the foundation of entrepreneurship, I would say, like solving problems and making things better and not accepting the status quo. That was
exactly.
always there. I just kind of didn't recognize it as a thing.
Funny, yeah, yeah. Something needs to spark. Well, perfect bridge to the founding of Gradient Labs. At some point, you decided enough is enough, or you got this fantastic idea. I need to start this company. If I don't do it, someone else will. What was the problem that you saw that was screaming for a solution?
That's a great question. I think so. When I joined Monzo, as I mentioned before, I joined them quite early on. And literally in the first week when I was there, they hired the first customer support agent as well, or the first customer operations person. And so they were sitting right next to me. And I think what was remarkable about Monzo, about that time, really customer support was so exceptional and so good because it was one of the core value propositions to kind of to go above and beyond in how we helped the customers back then. So, and there were things like we would travel to the other side of the city in London to give somebody a replacement card before they were traveling abroad. Literally things like that because somebody called in. It's like, hey, I'm traveling abroad today. I've just lost my card. I really need a replacement quickly. And somebody would go and travel.
Yeah.
And that was kind of at the very, very beginning. And then many years fast forward toward the end of it, when I was there, I think there were like 1,500 people in customer support or something like this, like a large number of people. And it became quite anonymous. It became like a big scaled organization. And the problem that we have realized is just like, it's so hard to run an exceptional customer support service at that scale, just because it's much harder to make people really, really care, like you might make people care when you're like the size of 5 or 10, right? And you're really team and you pour your heart into it. And really, what we saw then with AI, with the advent of GPT-4 in 2023, that you can actually make customer support amazing, maybe not to that degree, like with Hive people who can pour their heart into it, but really substantially better than what you can like manage to do in a very, very scaled and large organization. And so really, the way our mission was born and the problem that we saw is that it's really, really hard to offer exceptional customer support at scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that we can do that with AI much better. That was kind of the primary driver. And obviously the secondary driver is like all companies trying to do their things more efficiently. And so you can do it also much cheaper. You can do it better, but also cheaper. And so that was kind of the point where the company was born.
Yeah, I mean, that's about creating leverage, right? That you can actually keep supporting the same number of customers or larger groups of customers with the same amount of people without lowering the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
hopefully raising the bar.
Raising the bar.
That's
I like your point there. You know, it goes back to problem solving and not accepting the status quo. Because a lot of people say, okay, well, we are adding people or we're not adding people, and as a consequence, the bar will stay the same. No, there is always an opportunity to make it go up. I like that. I like the story also around it. So what I saw is that in one article I found that you scaled the company already to 1 million ARR in like 5 months after public go live with the
Yeah,
solution.
yeah,
Not sure where you are right now, but this whole era of how things are developed, what choices you make to develop them, are fundamental to how fast things can really go, right? So what was a fundamental, what was an important decision, an early decision that you took that is paying off superbly right now?
yeah. That's a great question. And the answer will probably like, okay, so I think we did something which would go against the advice of how you build and run startups. Because the typical advice is like, go launch very early and iterate very quickly with the feedback of customers, right? That's how it goes. In our case, it went actually very different. So we probably spent the first 14 months building before actually going live with the first customer.
Mm-hmm.
For better or for worse, like I don't know whether it's better or for worse, but that certainly resulted in a particular outcome. And that outcome was, and the reason, by the way, why we didn't go live with the customer, because we knew the problem so intimately well of customer support and how to automate it, that it was glaringly obvious after 6 months that it's shit. Like we had the first solution after 6 months, and it was just really bad, really underwhelming. It's like it was very, very clear to us what's broken about. Like we didn't need customer feedback to tell us, like, it's just not good. And so we really kind of set the bar very, very high for us, because from the beginning, and that's kind of our influence from having worked in a regulated financial industry, that the bar needs to be at least as high as humans in those companies can produce, or higher ideally. And so that was kind of the benchmark from the beginning, right? And so we kind of iterated for 14 months toward that benchmark, such that the goal was that our solution should be accepted by any bank. So we should be able to say, like, look, we will be able to guarantee you results which are better than your current agents can deliver to you. And that's at a fraction of a cost. And that was kind of always a bar. We kind of knew where the bar is. We could judge it. We didn't need any user feedback. It was glaringly obvious for us. And so really, we kind of took that time to iterate very quickly, because once you launch live and have a production system with a customer, then things slow down dramatically. Because you kind of need to run that, you have incidents, you kind of need to be very careful. And so the speed of development iteration really dramatically goes down, as opposed to the scenario before, where we really could develop an exceptional solution, but we took 14 months. But then once we launched it, then customers were really seriously impressed, like how well it actually does. And usually we kind of compare to existing human teams or existing human bots. So, sorry, human bots, existing bots. The comparisons to existing bots are like very trivial. So we win them in 100% of the cases. So that's why we decided to compare us actually to the human teams and how well they do, and whether we can beat them on, for example, customer satisfaction level. And I think that's kind of our journey, right? So we kind of spent probably a bit too long building, but that meant that we could really up the dial on quality and build a superb product, which now really, really resonates with the market. And it's like, okay, you clearly have something that nobody else has, so like that is miles ahead than anyone else's. And I think that's how we were able to really ramp up since launch so quickly.
Let me make a small interruption here. Dimitri just made a remark that sets his approach apart from conventional startup thinking. Most startups chase speed. Dimitri chased excellence. This eliminated the need for customer feedback loops and created an unassailable competitive position from day one. This is what remarkable software companies do. They acknowledge they cannot please everyone. Then they master the art of curiosity, and with that, create something valuable and desirable. Want to master these traits as well? Simply read my book. I've made the electronic version available for free. Just visit theremarkableeffect.com to grab your copy, and inspiration will spark within 10 minutes. Back to the interview. Yeah, you're touching upon a couple of very important points here. First of all, a lot of companies indeed start small, minimum viable products, and the whole word viable, I think, is the complete wrong word for the thing, because viable then means like the minimum.
Yeah.
whereby having something minimum is not bad as long as it's minimum remarkable. And that's what you did. You know, you said, okay, well, this is what it needs to do. This is the bar it needs to bridge and go beyond. And people need to be wowed by it. It doesn't even matter whether the whole solution is not there yet, as long as it's the bit that we are launching, that is the part people start talking about, which is exactly the whole perspective around the book that I wrote. So it
Nice.
resonates a lot with me.
Nice.
I particularly like the part where you say deliver measurable value, the guarantees. That's rare in the software industry. So what have you, now, first of all, coming to that idea, okay, we have to give a guarantee. That's one thing. How did you get to that point? And the other thing is, what has that decision done to your company? Because I think it helps. But
Yeah, I think so. Really, what we mean by that is, so okay, let me take a step back. So because we are working within the financial industry, the biggest blocker to adoption is just the risk aversion in this industry, right? Because like, what if we adopt something and like it really gives a silly response where like the regulator will come after us, it will be a PR disaster. So really the biggest blocker to adoption in the financial industry is like this risk aversion, which is like completely justified, by the way. Like if I see so many tools out there, they're just like really so poorly built. And so really what we decided to do is that we need to be able to say that we can provide almost like a guarantee that we will perform better than your human teams. That's a guarantee, not that we're going to be perfect, because perfect doesn't exist, right? So we will still make mistakes, but our bar is we need to outperform whatever is there now, right? Because that's when you can say, look, versus now, you can actually have a better CSAT, a better quality assurance score. Quality assurance is like internal QA, better regulatory and compliance outcomes, and lower cost. And on all of those four metrics, we can actually objectively show you that we are doing better than the existing team. And so we essentially build tooling around how you can show that objectively. So essentially we have like lots of quality assurance where humans need to review AI conversations. That's what most of our clients do anyway for their human support agents. But we ask them to do that for our AI agent as well, such that they treat it like almost like a member of the team.
yeah,
And then you can say, look, here's how the AI agent is doing on like identifying vulnerable customers. Here's how AI agent is doing on identifying complaints, on the CSAT, on everything. And here's how you kind of the rest of the team is doing. And this way you can show, look, on objective terms, it offers much better risk management and compliance, much better customer outcomes and customer satisfaction, and is much cheaper. And that's what guarantee means in our case. So we try to be better than the existing team.
yeah.
Perfect doesn't exist, by the way. Like right now in LLMs, they will make mistakes, but right now we have managed more than millions of conversations, and we haven't had any single like really bad outcome of like PR, like something that could be a PR disaster, or like where somebody would have received a harmful response
Yeah.
or offense or anything. There's not a single one that comes even close to that.
Perfect. I love the practicality of it, because that's also making it believable. I mean, everybody can say, okay, this is my guarantee, and you look at it, it's like, does it feel good?
Yeah.
And what you're doing here is make it objective. And
Yeah.
yeah, if the bar is people, that's a very good bar, because that's what they always been dealing with. Yeah.
Exactly, because like you only need to prove that you can make it better than right now, and then you kind of, you can show across all the dimensions that you can deliver better customer service, better cost, better quality assurance, and so on. And that typically resonates with company and with regulators, by the way, right? Because like we're dealing with financial institutions, and like if you show them, look, it actually leads to better compliance, it's typically a really good argument.
Love that. So, a couple of other questions to dig in a little bit deeper on that. First of all, with a guarantee, typically also comes okay, if it goes wrong, this is the consequence we take. How are you going about that? Because so many companies sort of shy away from that, whereby you can also say, okay, well, if we believe in it so much, and it happens maybe one in 100 cases, or
Yeah.
one in even 10 in 100 cases, what is the effect of that?
Yeah.
I mean, I had the CEO of Paddle on the podcast, Christian Owens, who also has a guarantee in respect to the kind of the business that he is running, which is about the payment infrastructure for software companies. And he also said it's not what we are. We're not measuring ourselves in terms of what we allow you to do. It's what we help you not to do anymore, and we take proud of that and we take ownership of that. So if this happens, we take it. If this happens, we take it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it makes the whole company far better focused. But I mean, back to my question, like, how have you done with the guarantee part then?
Yeah. Um, I don't want to go into too much details how we structure the SLA contract, but
Okay.
it's part of the SLA contract, right? So
Yeah.
a service level agreement. And we essentially embed metrics there which allow companies to claim a rebate essentially for that
Okay.
if we actually don't perform on those promised things, right? So I mean, that's what a guarantee technically is. So,
Yeah.
and then in some cases, they also essentially have exit clauses where if we don't perform at a certain level, at a certain CSAT level, they can actually cancel the contract earlier
Yeah.
rather than the committed period, because that's kind of as far as we can go. But that, in most cases, gives companies a lot of confidence. Like, okay, if they're kind of putting their neck on the line here,
Yeah.
then
True. That's how simple it sometimes can be. It's yeah, skin in the game. That
yeah,
is rare in the software industry. Although if you ask companies, well, you don't say that you give guarantees, but I mean, if you look at the way you ethically deal with your customers, likely I can already mention five or six, because if this happens, you likely fix it without charging. So why not mention it? Right? It's
yeah, oh, 100%.
the other thing is you mentioned now a couple of times that we're exclusively focused on the financial services industry. Um, I mean, and if I go and sort of wind back in terms of what you do, making exceptional customer service the norm, technically you could possibly say many other companies could use this. Why have you specifically chosen for financial services and likely within the financial services even deeper?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we kind of still debating it because the technology platform, but by the way, we have also non-financial services clients, just to,
Hmm.
just say that first. And the technology platform that we have built is actually quite vertical agnostic. So we could
Okay.
onboard a marketplace, we could onboard an e-commerce. Uh, But we noticed something when we launched in November that the first 10 or 12 clients were actually financial services. And first we didn't have that focus on financial services. It was just like, here you go, customer support automation, a very kind of general side. And yet all those customers were from financial services. We're like, hold on a second, why is there such a strong concentration here? Well, for one, obviously because of our network as well, like we are obviously biased, right? So our network is like closer to financial services. But what we realize is that we have an incredible kind of found a market fit in that space because we actually understand the industry well. And whenever I start speaking about those problems to financial services, they're like, oh yeah, he's clearly getting it. Like he has done that. He has been there before. He knows
Yeah.
our problems. And so really the conversation resonates instantly way more when I talk to financial services because they feel like, okay, we actually know what's inside, like what it means to risk manage something, what it means, what governance means, what it means to get something through compliance.
Yeah.
All of those things we have done for years at Monzo because we kind of needed to bring in innovative products, but
Yeah.
make it in a safe way such that the regulator would kind of accept it and you have all the kind of controls and risk mitigations in place.
Exactly.
And even being able to talk about those topics resonate instantly with people. So that's one thing. So just essentially kind of on the communication level. But the second thing is financial services do have a very, very high bar um, that they're kind of not willing to go below. And that's where our product really shines because for every single customer that we onboarded so far, we have a CSAT customer satisfaction score of like 80 to 95%. This is like a typical human range, by the way.
Yeah.
And really for them, not many companies come or for them, when I say for them, for financial services, not many companies actually come into question that they could onboard because most of the bots would not be able to perform so high.
True.
And lastly, there are like some specific requirements around financial services, like regulatory requirements in particular. It's like you need to be able to identify, like I'm going to make specific examples from the UK. You need to be able to identify vulnerable customers and treat them somehow differently. You need to be able to identify complaints, but not only when the customer says, I want to complain, you need to kind of be able to identify implicit complaints as well. You need to be able not to tip them off. Like if a customer being investigated on the fraud side, you can't just like somehow disclose it and say it. So there are like different risky scenarios which you need to be able to deal with. And we can deal with those out of the box because we understand them quite well. And one of the first customers were from financial services, so we kind of needed to build all of those in. But now they're available out of the box. So my pitch is like literally whenever I go something, look, we can get it up and running within a week, and it will be just no tuning, no anything. You don't need to do anything. It's already working for you perfectly out of the box. And that's why it kind of, we realize, okay, the pitch is just so much stronger for financial services, and they don't have many options. So we can position ourselves like the only viable safe option for you. And so that's to your point, because I told you before, I'm reading your newsletters and dailies. And so that's where I think how we are different, right? So that's like not only better, where we like deflect more queries, provide higher quality, but really I think about us like as the only safe options for some of those companies.
Yeah. Makes so much sense, and technically there's so many companies that make that mistake because we can help them and we have the functionality, but in the reality, this of course, for the financial industry, you solve a problem that is a higher value to solve and more critical for them to solve. And for them, they get value from you that is very hard to get from someone else. That's where difference starts to grow. So I totally understand that. And there's, I think for the time being, enough financial services companies around in the world to build a very good business around. So talking about that, we already talked early on that in half a year's time, you brought it to about $1 million in ARR. So there's strong growth there. What did you learn from that phase? In hindsight, what were the things that actually worked best for you to get that going?
I think the struggles that we had before were kind of slightly before that, because like if you build so long, 14 months, at some point you start to question your direction. Like you question, like, is it the right thing that we're doing? Because you see other companies popping up, and like if somebody doesn't care about quality, they might release a solution much earlier. They might earn and start growing and seeing those revenues already coming in. And so there was always a lot of FOMO during that build phase. Like, are we doing the right thing? Because we are aiming for the super, super high quality, but maybe we should release now and start earning revenue. In hindsight, I think it was the right thing to do because, well, now it makes my selling much easier, right? So whenever we have a POC, like we have a sales motion which goes via proof of concept, i.e. we like offer proof of concept and say, compare us versus something else or versus your human team or something else. And really, right now, we have like 100% win rate on the POCs because the difference is like day and night. And really, in hindsight, what it refers to me that we had the right intuition to aim for such a high quality, because now it makes selling so much easier. So my main goal is usually get the companies to POC, and once I get them to POC, it's like, okay, my job is almost done here because it will be very, very easy to convert them from there. So really kind of that's where the learning came from the last 5 months. I think we're just like frantically trying to get customers live, learning about how to design contracts, how to negotiate commercials. We first started onboarding customers on pay-as-you-go basis because we thought it's just much easier, which it is, because you don't need any commitments or anything. And now we started converting customers to annual commitments and annual contracts. To be honest, if I would go back, I would probably still do the same things. At the beginning, it felt very uncomfortable to ask somebody for an annual commitment where you have an unproven product and like very early stage product. But now it feels like, okay, we have enough customers. We know it works perfectly well for them. So we can go much faster into a commitment-based model. So from the get-go, not kind of having this pre-pay-as-you-go phase. So those things, but those are like small tactical. I don't feel like there were any big learnings where I would say, like in hindsight, I would have done X or Y.
Okay.
Maybe hired sales a bit earlier. So, by the way, our first salesperson joined today, which I'm super, super excited about, um, to
Yeah.
help me on this journey. So probably could have done it a lot earlier because we have seen it very, very early on in the year that there's an incredible product market fit and the product works amazingly well for certain customers. So it should
Wow.
have probably been a first signal for us. Okay, hire sales now. But the typical guidance was wait till you have 1 million ARR, do founder-led sales, and then hire the first person. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
probably what slowed us down a little
Totally
bit.
understand that. And to the point of product market fit, because I mean, product market fit, of course, is something that is, yeah, I mean, how do you define that? But I think what you've done the right way here is the niching down on one particular vertical and a specific type of characteristics within that vertical, and then build something that, yeah, that you know so intimately well that it raises the bar, yeah, compared to anything they know up to now. And that's how you can get to very fast product market fit compared to others who are actually striving for it for years and years and years and still not find it. What have you learned in that phase or in that period?
In which period? Sorry, in which period
No,
do you mean?
well, to get to that product market fit that you're talking about, because you say
Yeah,
it's so strong.
yeah. I think it wasn't we didn't have the typical struggles of a company to find the product market fit because for better or for worse, we were convinced that we know what the problem is. So
Mhm.
we essentially from day one, we never said, okay, let's try to understand the problem better or let's define the problem. We were convinced, maybe we were oblivious to be honest, but it worked out somehow that we know what the problem is. We just need to solve it technically really, really well.
Yeah,
And so I think
yeah,
that gave us a conviction of because I've talked to many founders who kind of do more unique, more novel approaches or solve more novel problems. And
hmm,
sometimes you have a phase where you kind of need to really nail down the problem, really understand what is the value that they bring. In our case, it's super, super trivial in terms of the value, right? So like we are automating manual repetitive work. It like costs, there's like cost element, which is most business oriented. There's like quality and customer experience element. And those are like very, very extremely measurable. So it's like, it's tightly connected to the business value and it's very, very measurable. It has advantages and disadvantages, but the advantage is that if you can showcase that you can drive automation to X% for a company, that has a direct correlation, direct connection to the value that this company has, right? I.e.,
yeah,
like either reducing cost or increasing revenue or whatever it is.
yeah, exactly.
And so for us, it was like, okay, there's this metric. We know it's connected directly to company value. For company value, companies are willing to pay a lot of money. So if we can really drive up that metric, and that metric is the automation rate and the quality, as you said, then we have something that really can generate a lot of value for the product. But the not nice thing is it's about that it makes them then a crowded market and everyone competes on that thing, right? So
Yeah,
because it's like two metrics that you need to compete on and it's clear to everyone, and it drives a lot of business value, but there's not a lot of like niche positioning here and this like we do that problem but with this take or this take. So kind of your positioning becomes much harder apart from like a few obvious choices like the industry that we had.
yeah. So how have you gone about it? I mean, the positioning is what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Well, I think we stumbled into it. I'm not sure we did it very proactively. So that's kind of the point that I mentioned before, because we just observed what the first customers were and kind of how financial services react to the demos and how when we talk to them, and it just became clear to us at some point. It's like, okay, we clearly have something special going on here.
Yeah,
Whereas in all the other verticals, we're just like one of the main players, or one of the many players. And
yeah,
the other question is like, how are you different? Whether here it was always clear to people how we're different. And so, we kind of stumbled into it. We never kind of sat down and say, oh, like let's position ourselves, let's make it niche or not. We just realized, okay, that's where it resonates the most. So let's double down on it instead of just
yeah.
going very wide.
Yeah, that's also that's an interesting point that you make about if for those type of companies, for those right type of companies, it was instantly clear how you were different. And a lot of companies know how they're different, or they think, okay, this is how we're different. But then it's all about the context that you put your difference to, where people say, I get it or I don't get it.
Yeah.
And for some people, they couldn't care less how different you are because it doesn't do anything of value to them. And
100%.
well, you can still sell something. And these are, of course, your customers that you don't want because they come and they go. The churn thing. Let me see. Talked about positioning. I talked about difference. Talked about guarantees. How is, this is of course your first company that you have started, that you're running as a CEO. The definition of success. How do you measure the success of your company? What type of metrics are you using there?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, it's probably a fairly boring answer. It became now revenue at the very highest level, right? I mean, but that's not kind of insightful or interesting, but some of the most important goals is like driving revenue and how you get there. But I think the more interesting conversation is like, what are the levers and how do you actually ensure that you can grow now the fastest, but also maintain the ability to grow fast, to be able still to sell well in 9 months' time when the competition is kind of catching up. Because right now I feel like we have a clearly superior product. Whenever we have a chance to compete side by side, we win. But people are sleeping, so the competition will catch up. And so one of the main goals that we kind of discuss internally is like, how do we make sure that in 6 to 9 months' time, we're still a no-brainer choice for any of the POCs that we do? And so for this, we're essentially talking about the depths of automation, because what we have found is that most companies, for more complex customers, they can automate a maximum of like 60% of all the customer inbound support. But we believe we have our position based on our domain knowledge that we can actually drive it all the way to 80 or 90% automation rate. But for that to actually happen, it requires an incredible amount of focus and still a technological leap that will enable that. So it's actually, many people perceive that customer support market is overcrowded, mostly soft, because everyone is really claiming on their side, like, oh, we can do 80% automation, we can do 90% automation. And those are not lies. Those are just cherry-picked numbers, right? So for some small company, you always can automate 90%. So that's always true. But really, if you take a bank and you really want to get them to 80 or 90%, that just doesn't exist right now. And that's what we currently are obsessed about. How do we take a complex company and build a platform for them that can get them to 80, 90% automation? We're not there yet, or like not everything is there yet, but that's what we believe will position us in a really strong terms in like 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
And that's what we kind of obsess about in terms of metrics internally, in terms of what is the maximum automation rate we can achieve with companies and how easy it is to achieve it with them.
Is it how easy it is, or is it sometimes how hard it is because it gives you a moat?
Well, how easy it is for them.
Yeah, okay.
So ideally, obviously, you want that experience to be as, like, you don't want them to put 2 years worth of work to get to 90%. You want them to put maybe 1 to 2 months of work to get to 90%. So that is the easiness that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and the risk at the end that you're walking there is that if everybody sort of, in a cheeky way says 80%, yes, we can do it, but it's only for some cases, you go into that battle again of better, better, better. And we do 81% and we do 82%. How do you use that to your advantage, whereby it instantly becomes clear to someone that understands that you are well ahead of the curve?
I actually, when I was reading your daily newsletters, I was thinking about exactly that point, right? So it's like, it feels like if we're competing on automation rate and we can do 80 instead of everyone else's 60, like, it feels like better. But I think they are really good economical arguments that you can make here where it becomes substantially better, not just better. And the reason for that is, okay, maybe it's going to go to too much depth into customer support, but let me portray this like this. So if you think about ticket automation, if you automate the first 50% of tickets, you automate roughly 20% of time that the customer support agents spent on those. And that's because the 50% of the easiest tickets are typically very easy. You can resolve them in one answer. There's like a very simple reply to them. So really, most companies right now kind of patting themselves on the shoulder and say, we are automating half of the support. They're not. They're automating only 20% of it. If you measure it by the business value that really matters, i.e. the time spent on resolving it. And so the argument that I'm trying to build is really, there's a huge difference if you go from 50 to 80. So it's like, it means you automate at least another half, or like you at least double the automation that you had before. And so how we portray that value, we still need to figure it out. My initial thoughts were obviously, and by the way, many companies actually do ask us and drive us forward. It's like, can you really get us to 80 or 90%? And so that's kind of their goal, right? So they're not interested anymore in like 60% automation. They really want like, how do we get to 90%? And so it is something that they clearly and strongly want. But I think the way of convincing them that we can do that is having enough case studies where we've actually done it with similar enough companies. But I get your point though. Like it feels still like, oh, we are better than others. I think we still need to learn how to position that.
Well, at the end, it comes down to your approach, because no company goes the same direction to solve a particular issue. You go this way and the other one goes that way, and that is typically how the difference is then made. Yeah, and then like you say, it's the 50% is easy for everybody, but the moment you get to the 60, then the 70, then the 80, you get to the edge cases, and the edge cases is possibly where your value communication needs to be as well. I'll follow up on that after this call. I got some ideas for that.
I would love to hear your thoughts, by the way, on that positioning.
No, it reminds me of a company I worked with in the CPQ space, configure, price, quote, and it's typically these tools that are about, that people are using on their website to configure a bike and configure a bed and configure a sauna, and these are relatively simple things. But this particular company was also in the complex arena of companies that were creating conveyor belt systems for airports, whereby a whole lot of other things started to play and make the whole thing more complex.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, much more errors and much more consequences of errors as well. So that's an interesting thing to look into in terms of what are your edges in terms of complexity and dynamics possibly. That's worth another podcast in itself. I was looking at, you mentioned POC a number of times, and I was looking at the time here. One more question on that. Do you see POC as an advantage or more of a hurdle to growth?
That's a great question. I think right now they're inevitable. Ideally, I would not want to do them, right? Because they just take time.
Yeah.
Right now they're inevitable because that's where the value becomes clear, like day and night for us. Right.
So then you can also say it's an advantage because you can say you have a 100% win rate.
Yeah.
I know plenty of companies that do proof of concepts because that's the only way to get in and possibly get chosen.
Yeah. So, yes, but it costs time, right? So it's just add another month on your sales cycle, and but right now it makes it easy to win. So I mean, ideally, I would like to be able to a place where I can just show case studies where for very, very similar companies that are public and say, look, we can do the POC, but here's how it looks like for all your peers. Do you want to get started with it faster?
You really want to do a proof of concept?
Yeah. I mean, but for now, I think proof of concept is the way to go. And it's like, it shows you typically remarkable results. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's that. I would take it with both hands and say, okay, well, I mean, fine that the month is a month, but we have 100% win rate. Last question then, based on your 2 years of entrepreneurial experience and what you know right now, growing this company at a rapid pace, what will be a do and what will be a don't that you'd like to share with other entrepreneurs that are aspiring a similar journey?
For a similar stage, I mean, that we have just went through, yeah.
Yeah.
I think in terms of an interesting experience that we made is like we kind of hired lots of people before, and we thought, okay, hiring, like we figured it out, we know how it works, and then we hired a bunch of people which is what not the right fit for the company from the beginning. And it's like really shocked us and surprised. Like, how could it be that we hired so many people before and they were really good? How come we suddenly lost the ability to hire? We just kind of didn't realize that we are now in a very different space in a small company, and we just need a different type of people.
Yeah.
Right? The people with potentially high agency, high drive, and high motivation and independence. And certain other profiles would have worked in a previous place of brilliantly and smart people, but they didn't work anymore in this place because we hired people from MIT, brilliant scientists, and we're like, who then went to go like to work for OpenAI. It's like, clearly they're very smart and in demand, but something didn't work here. And so I think we kind of made our learnings here in terms of hiring. It's like you need to adjust it for different circumstances if you hired mostly for larger companies before, because you will need different hiring profiles. So that kind of was maybe the do or don't in one thing. I'm not sure.
No, that's a good point. It's hire for where you are on your journey. And sometimes you hire people that are too far ahead, maybe.
Yeah. In terms of like maybe that's a lesson actually that I learned previously from our previous companies. I think we were building a tech startup and we kind of tried to reinvent too many things at the same time, not only in the tech space, but also like in the HR space, like how you design career ladders, how you design progression frameworks, compensation, like titles, just don't, right? So just don't reinvent the wheel in that space. Like there are enough thousands of companies who try different things. Like if there would have been a winning solution, like you would have known by now. You really don't need to get rid of your managers. You really don't need to get rid of your titles. It just becomes chaos. It makes companies feel good about themselves because it makes you feel special because you have done something and you hope that you're going to do it better than anyone else. But I think that was kind of the biggest learning from my previous place. Just like, don't reinvent those things. Just go with whatever the best practice is and focus on where you truly can innovate and add value, and don't reinvent HR and organizational structures.
Exactly. Yeah, focus on the value that you create for customers and let the organization support that. I like that. So we got more questions, but let's make the last one. Where can people go to find out more about your company, Gradient Labs, or to say hi to you?
Yes, so on LinkedIn, Dimitri Masin, just please find me, connect with me. And gradientlabs.ai is the webpage. So we post regular blog posts there. So please do go. And if our solution is actually relevant for you, please do request a demo. I would love to give it to you, to anyone. So yeah.
Perfect. Connect. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conversation, Dimitri. Thanks for sharing the wisdom. Good luck on the next part of the journey. I'll keep following you. And who knows where we are 3 years down the road on another podcast.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks a lot for your time.
And that wraps my conversation with Dimitri Masin, co-founder and CEO of Gradient Labs. If you got value from this episode, please share it with other SaaS founders who need to hear this as well. And if you got 10 seconds, a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts will help more people to find these conversations. Thank you for listening to the Remarkable SaaS podcast. If you want more insights like this, subscribe to my daily email, Espresso with Ton. It's a 2-minute shot of clarity for SaaS founders who want to create pull, not push. You can sign up, along with getting my book, at valueinspiration.com. See you in the next episode.